My guest at this time is Jim DeMint. He's a former congressman and U.S. Senator from South Carolina. He served as president of the Heritage Foundation and is now the founding chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute. Along with Rachel Bovard, Mr. DeMint is also co-author of the brand new book, Conservative, What to Keep. And Senator, thanks so much for being with us.
Greg, it's good to be back with you, and I appreciate what you do every day. It's good to be on your show.
Thank you, sir. It's good to have you back, and I know it's been a few years now since you were a member of the U.S. Senate. With all the drama on the Hill, are you missing it at all, or are you glad to be not immersed in that every day?
Well, I'm playing a role I like now. I still work on the Hill supporting conservatives who are on the inside, the House members and senators. But frankly, they're really not doing anything in the Senate other than confirming judges, and that's pretty much rote. If they worked a little longer, we could get a lot more through. But no, I'm not missing that part of it. And Greg, I believe more than I did when I left the Senate that we've got to win the battle on the outside before we're going to win it on the inside. That's why Rachel and I wrote the book about conservatism, so we can build a movement around some positive ideas that Americans really believe in.
So let's dive into that now, because you were known and still are known as a strong conservative, and that term gets used a lot but doesn't necessarily get defined a lot. You and Rachel do that in this book. In fact, you pretty much define it right there in the title. So we'll get more specific about policy as our conversation goes on here. But as a conservative, how do you prioritize what must be kept and what is expendable?
Well, we first need to realize that it goes well beyond politics. Conservatism is just about keeping those things that matter and make life better. In the case of our country, to make our country stronger and better for future generations. So the title, Knowing What to Keep, is so important to recognizing that conservatism is an attitude of gratitude, really, and being grateful and thankful for the things that matter in our lives and wanting to keep them. And as you can see from the table of contents, that it's not what you would expect. It's keeping our covenants, keeping our faith. It's keeping our differences, keeping our republic, which is the decentralized idea that our founders had in mind, and keeping our traditions and keeping our land of opportunity, which is all about free market economics. But those are the basics that create the America we love. And what we need to do in politics is understand what those are, how to apply them to current challenges, and to make sure we keep them for the future. Well,
you get pretty quickly to the point of the freedom of faith and the exercise of faith, kind of like our founders did in the Bill of Rights right there at the top of the First Amendment. And obviously there's a great debate about what that means in our country now. We see Supreme Court challenges, just saw one this week, in fact, and we see it in a number of different areas. Well, you can't do that. You can't say that. That's bigoted and so forth. So talk about what our founders meant and what America needs to embrace from your perspective in terms of a vibrant faith in this country and the free exercise of it.
Free exercise means you don't have to have a faith. But what we need as a country and the way our Constitution is set up is you're free to believe what you want. I'm free to believe what I want. And that's part of keeping our differences. Folks seem to think the people on the left really respect diversity, but they don't. They want everyone to have the same beliefs, the same values, go to the same schools, have the same health care. If you look at their policies, it's all about centrally controlled sameness. We want to keep diversity, and that means that people all through my neighborhood can believe different things, go to different churches, not go to church at all. And as Americans, in our covenant with each other, that's part of the whole deal, is you believe what you want, and I'm fine with that as long as you're not trying to force me to believe what you believe or try to get the government to do that. So part of keeping unity and peace in a country with broad diversity is allowing people to do different things, and that really begins with faith.
Why does the left see that as such a threat?
Well, if you look at their goal, which is more central control and even global control of a lot of things, all of their policies lead towards more central planning and control. What faith does, it allows every individual to have meaning and freedom within their own sphere. And we're accountable to God. We're not accountable to government. And In America, we're accountable to each other because we, the people, are in effect a covenant. Russell Kirk, who was the godfather, really, of the conservative movement, he said the conservatism begins with a belief in a transcendent order, a permanent moral order that we all ascribe to. It's not a religion. It's a belief that there is a God who presides over all governments and people. And if we all believe that to a degree, or at least respect others' right to believe it, it creates a harmony in a society, even if you're different. And so understanding faith and how that works within the conservative movement is key. But I want people to understand it's not using the government to bludgeon people into believing anything.
No, that's very well laid out in the book, defending the right to freely exercise your faith, but also understanding and respecting that folks can believe whatever they want to in this country. But let's talk about faith in another way, because in a disturbing way, and I think you would probably agree with this, a lot of folks are putting their faith in the system. I mean, you see people inconsolably dissolving into tears based on election results. I'm pretty sure that's not what the founders wanted, with folks ultimately thinking, well, my life is ruined for the next 4 years, or my life is now officially wonderful for the next 4 years because the person I voted for won or lost.
We are making too much of politics, and all the news is consumed with it. You wouldn't know anything else was going on in America if you watch the news. But our lives are 95 or 99% non-government. That normal people are not involved with this. But you're right. Too much of what we value and believe in and is government related now, and that's why there's a conflict between being an individual, a person of faith, having your own beliefs, and a government that's all controlling. And if we look back through history, the great tyrants of history who have destroyed so many people and civilizations, one of the first things they do is to get rid of religion in their country, particularly Christianity, because it is you can't have two masters, as the Bible says. And if God is your master, then government is not going to be. And so that's the conflict we have today. And the left seems to understand that they have to secularize everything in order to have the control they want at the government level.
Let's talk about some of the other ideas now, things that need to be conserved. And you mentioned free markets. That's another area that's being demonized now, that's just for the greedy and the rich getting richer and so forth, themes that you've heard throughout your political career now into the private sector. But if you look at history, and as you point out in the book, there's a vibrant history of building up entire cultures and societies through free markets rather than from a centralized perspective. How do you articulate that case in the face of this conventional wisdom that capitalism is all about selfishness?
Well, capitalism has pulled more people out of poverty than all government programs combined. The data is so clear. We've got a graph in the book that shows the world GDP, gross domestic product, up until the industrial age. Everybody, 99% of the world plus, were basically subsistent farmers living in poverty. I mean, we forget that as Americans today, but there were only the kings and the very elite that had anything. But once free market capitalism began, and people started trading goods, creating one thing and trading for another, we saw that the wealth of the world go up dramatically. I mean, there's a straight line up. And over the last several decades, just millions have been pulled out of poverty in Africa and India and even China. And because of this free market idea of people producing things, selling them or trading them for other things. And that doesn't mean it's not without its complications. And certainly there's greed. But one of the points we make in the book, Conservative, is that capitalism basically forces greedy people to serve others, because that's the only way you can make money and sell something is if you make something someone else wants. So it's a good system, and Adam Smith talked about that in The Wealth of Nations, is that capitalism just naturally, when you're trying to better yourself, you in effect better a lot of other people at the same time.
Former South Carolina Congressman and Senator Jim DeMint. He is also the chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute. The new book, along with co-author Rachel Bovard, is Conservative: What to Keep. Find the second half of our interview on this very same site. I'm Greg Corombos reporting for Radio America.